You did not suddenly arrive at strength by chance. You were shaped, pressed, and measured in ways you could not see while you were inside the process. The test you passed was never announced, never labeled, never explained. That is how heaven examines those it intends to trust. The most decisive trials are quiet, no warning, no witnesses or no reassurance, only pressure that seems excessive, delays that feel cruel, and silence that forces you to confront who you really are when nothing makes sense. You thought you were merely surviving another hard season. Heaven was evaluating your alignment. You thought you were enduring confusion. Heaven was observing your obedience. You thought God was distant. In reality, He was close enough to see every decision you made when no one else was watching. Every moment you restrained your tongue. Every time you chose integrity over advantage. Every instance you stayed faithful when walking away would have felt justified. Those moments were not wasted and they were weighed. The ultimate test was never about how loudly you could declare faith when life was smooth. It was about whether you could remain anchored when life became unfair, when prayers felt unanswered, when doors refused to open, when the people you supported misunderstood you or disappeared. The test was whether disappointment would harden your heart or deepen your surrender, whether delay would destroy your faith or refine it. And yes, there were moments you almost broke, moments you were tired of being the strong one, moments you questioned why your path seemed heavier than others, why you were required to give more, wait longer, endure deeper isolation. That was not punishment. That was preparation. Heaven does not overburden what it does not intend to elevate. Pressure is not proof of rejection. It is evidence of selection. You passed the test when you did not become bitter. You passed it when you refused to compromise your character even when no reward was visible. You passed it when you continued to obey quietly, without recognition, without affirmation, without clarity. You passed it when your faith became a choice rather than a feeling. Many talk about trust. Few demonstrate it when nothing changes. You did. Do not underestimate what you carried. Do not minimize the nights you cried in private, the exhaustion you hid behind a composed exterior, the prayers whispered through clenched teeth. The test was never about being flawless. It was about remaining yielded. Would you stay teachable or become defensive? Would you remain faithful or grow cynical? Would you trust God's timing or try to force outcomes on your own terms? The reason the resistance intensified near the end is because tests always peak before completion. The pressure increases right before release. The enemy presses hardest when authority is about to shift. But what was meant to exhaust you instead qualified you. You did not quit. You did not turn back. You did not betray your assignment. That alone sets you apart. Something has changed now. You feel it even if you cannot explain it. The confusion is thinning. The heaviness is lifting. There is a quiet steadiness where anxiety once lived. That is not imagination. That is transition. Heaven does not linger over unproven ground. It stands firmly where trust has been demonstrated. The ancient words recorded in the letter of James, chapter 1, verse 12. Speak directly to this moment. Blessed is the one who perseveres under trial, because, having stood the test, that person will receive the crown of life that the Lord has promised to those who love Him. You did not merely endure, you stood, and standing matters. Passing the test does not mean the journey is over. It means the responsibility is changing. Heaven does not elevate based on talent alone. It elevates based on faithfulness under pressure. You have proven you can be trusted in silence, in delay, in misunderstanding. That is why heaven stands with you now differently than before. This is where many hesitate. They pass the test but continue living as if they are still being examined. They wait for permission that has already been granted. Hear this clearly: you are no longer waiting. You are being backed. The same heaven that watched quietly is now moving deliberately on your behalf. Align yourself. Stay humble. Stay obedient. Do not rush, but do not retreat. What comes next will require clarity, courage, and movement, but only because you have already proven you can handle it. Before moving forward, mark this moment intentionally. If this message resonates with what your spirit already knows, take a simple step. Like this message. Share it with someone who is still inside the test and needs strength. Subscribe to remain connected to what is unfolding. And as a single prophetic act, only once comment the number 12 below. Not for visibility, not for people, but as a declaration that the season of testing is complete and divine order is being established. You were pressed harder than others, not because you were weaker, but because something heavier was being formed within you. Unequal pressure is rarely accidental. In everyday life, it shows up quietly through responsibility that arrives too early, expectations that are never spoken yet constantly felt, and consequences that seem out of proportion to your actions. To understand this season clearly, you must slow down and observe your life without judgment. Begin with a simple, practical exercise that fits naturally into daily life. Set aside 5 uninterrupted minutes. Sit somewhere familiar. No phone, no music, no distractions. Bring your attention to one clear question. Where did the pressure feel disproportionate to the situation? This is how you begin to identify disproportionate pressure. Think about moments when a small mistake carried unusually heavy consequences. Times when you were expected to stay composed while others were allowed to fall apart. Situations where you were required to be responsible, patient, or emotionally steady far beyond what felt reasonable. You are not revisiting these moments to relive pain or assign blame. You are simply noticing patterns. Write down 2 or 3 situations where you remember thinking, "This feels heavier than it should be." This 5-minute reflection often reveals something important. Pressure followed you consistently, not randomly. Responsibility found you early. Standards were higher for you, even when no one explained why. Life demanded maturity from you sooner than from others. That is not coincidence. It is often the first sign that capacity was being trained long before authority or recognition appeared. Next, move into the second practice. Give yourself 7 to 10 minutes. Choose one of the moments you wrote down and gently trace it backward. Ask a different question now. What was being formed in me through this? Stay practical. Avoid vague answers. Look for concrete results. If you were often misunderstood, perhaps you learned how to listen carefully and respond with clarity instead of reaction. If you were left unsupported, maybe you developed self-reliance, discernment, and internal stability. If progress was delayed repeatedly, patience and long-term vision may have been strengthened. The event itself is rarely the point. The internal structure built through it is. This kind of reflection brings your past back into proportion. Many people assume hardship means misalignment or failure. Often it means development. You are learning how to stand without reassurance, how to make decisions without consensus, how to remain steady when outcomes were uncertain. These are not survival traits alone, they are foundational skills for leadership in work, family, and community. The Word of God gives language to this measured nature of pressure. The Apostle Paul wrote in his letter to the Corinthians, chapter 10, verse 13, "No temptation has overtaken you except what is common to mankind. And God is faithful. He will not let you be tempted beyond what you can bear. Notice what this implies. Pressure is not limitless, it is calibrated. If you were allowed to face it, our capacity already existed within you, even if you could not see it at the time. The pressure did not create strength from nothing. It revealed what was already planted. As you complete this reflection, pay attention to how it changes your self-perception. You may notice less comparison with others, less confusion about why your path looked different, less judgment toward yourself for needing rest, space, or solitude. Understanding restores balance. It allows you to honor what you carried instead of minimizing it. This process is not about glorifying hardship or justifying suffering. It is about reclaiming meaning so the past no longer defines you unconsciously. When pressure comes again, and it will, you will recognize it sooner. You will ask better questions. Instead of "Why is this happening to me?" you will ask, "What is this shaping now?" 5 minutes to recognize disproportionate pressure. 7 to 10 minutes to trace the deeper reason. That is enough. You are not dissecting your life. You are aligning with it. What once felt like an unfair burden begins to reveal itself as intentional preparation. And with that realization, something inside you settles steadier, clearer, and more grounded than before. That steadiness begins to show in small, ordinary moments. You pause before reacting. You listen more carefully. You notice when old pressure tries to rush you, and you choose a calmer response. These subtle shifts signal that understanding has replaced confusion and that you are no longer driven by habits formed in survival. Over time, this awareness changes how you relate to your past. Instead of seeing it as something that happened to you, you recognize it as something that shaped you. The weight you carried becomes wisdom you can draw from, allowing you to move forward with greater confidence and less self-doubt. With this new perspective, you move through life with less urgency and more intention. You trust your timing, respect your limits, and recognize that growth does not always demand struggle. Sometimes, it simply asks for presence and the willingness to choose differently. There was a moment you almost overlooked. It did not look dramatic. There was no thunder, no clear announcement, no sudden relief. Yet that was the moment heaven took note, not when circumstances changed, but when you did. The turning point was internal before it was ever external. It happened when you realized you could no longer live divided, when you stopped negotiating with fear, when you chose alignment over comfort, even though nothing around you immediately improved. That decision may have felt small, even ordinary, but in the spiritual realm it carried weight. Heaven responds not to noise, but to resolve. You did not suddenly become fearless. You became honest. Honest about what was no longer working. Honest about what you could no longer tolerate within yourself. Honest about the cost of staying the same. That honesty marked a shift. Before, you were enduring. In that moment, you began deciding. Many people wait for clarity before they commit. You committed before clarity arrived. That is why heaven took notice. Faith is not proven when answers are visible, but when obedience comes without explanation. You aligned your actions before you received confirmation. That is rare. Think back. It may have been a quiet prayer where you said, "I can't keep doing this halfway." It may have been a decision to walk away from something familiar but draining. It may have been choosing integrity when compromise would have protected you. No one may have applauded. Some may not have even understood, but heaven did. The atmosphere shifted not because circumstances changed, but because authority did. When you chose alignment, you stopped leaking energy. You stopped moving in two directions internally. And when division ends, power concentrates. That is when resistance often spikes because opposition senses that something irreversible has taken place. This is why the struggle felt different afterward. Harder in some ways, clearer in others. You were no longer confused about who you were, only about how long the process would take. Confusion about identity ended. Delay remained, and that distinction matters. Heaven works with people who know who they are, even if they do not yet know where they are going. The ancient words recorded in the letter to the Hebrews on chapter 11, verse 6. Speak directly to this moment. Without faith, it is impossible to please God, because anyone who comes to him must believe that he exists and that he rewards those who earnestly seek him. Notice what is rewarded: not perfection, not speed, not visibility, but earnest seeking. You sought alignment more than relief. You sought truth more than comfort. That posture drew heaven's attention. From that moment, unseen support began to organize. Conversations you did not hear, delays that quietly protected you, redirections that felt like setbacks but prevented greater loss. Heaven does not rush. It arranges, and arrangements take time. This is also when discernment sharpened. You began sensing when something was off before evidence appeared. You noticed patterns repeating, not to frustrate you, but to teach you. You became less reactive, more observant, less desperate, more deliberate. These are signs that authority is stabilizing. Yet here is the subtle danger at this stage: doubting the significance of that inner decision because external results lag behind. Do not make that mistake. Spiritual shifts always precede visible change. What you decided in private altered the trajectory, even if the scenery has not caught up yet. This is why patience now is not passive. It is active trust. You are not waiting aimlessly. You are holding alignment. And alignment is work. It requires restraint, consistency, and the courage to not revert when progress feels slow. Before moving further, mark this moment internally and outwardly, with intention. I want you to comment a short phrase, under 4 words. I chose alignment. This is not repetition of anything you have said before. It is specific. It names the moment heaven recognized. When you write it, you are not declaring perfection. You are acknowledging a decision already made. The explanation is simple. What you name gains clarity on nun, and what gains clarity gains strength. You are no longer drifting. You are directed even if the destination is still unfolding. Heaven noticed when you chose alignment over comfort, and that choice is still speaking on your behalf. When you say, I chose alignment, you are naming a moment when inner agreement replaced inner conflict. It means your thoughts, values, and actions stopped pulling in opposite directions. Even if your life did not instantly change, your direction did. Alignment is the end of self-betrayal. I chose alignment also means you accepted responsibility for your position without blaming circumstances. You stopped waiting for perfect conditions and decided to move truthfully within imperfect ones. That choice restores personal authority. It returns power to where it belongs: inside your decisions, not outside your control. Most importantly, I chose alignment is a commitment to remain consistent when old patterns try to return. It is not a one-time declaration, but an ongoing posture. Each day you reinforce it through small but faithful actions. Over time, alignment becomes stability, and stability becomes momentum. There is a quiet but piercing story recorded in the Gospels about Jesus and the Samaritan woman at the well. It happens at noon, the hottest hour of the day when no one else is around. She comes alone, not because she prefers solitude but because avoidance has become safer than exposure. Jesus asks her for water, then gently turns the conversation toward truth, not accusation, not condemnation. Truth. He names what she has been carrying, what she has been hiding, what she has normalized. And instead of running, she stays. That is where healing begins. This moment matters because Jesus does not offer comfort before truth. He offers truth as comfort. He does not shame her history, but he does not avoid it either. He shows her that what she has been avoiding is not what disqualifies her. It is what has been blocking her healing. Mercy does not ignore reality. Mercy illuminates it. This is the moment you are standing in now. A moment when excuses no longer protect you, and avoidance no longer soothes you. When mercy steps back not to abandon you, but to make room for truth to speak clearly. Truth is not cruel. Truth is precise. Like a skilled surgeon, it cuts only where healing is needed. In everyday life, this looks far less dramatic than a biblical encounter, but it feels just as confronting. It shows up when you realize a pattern you kept blaming on others actually requires your participation to continue. When you notice that the same conflict keeps reappearing in different forms. When you admit that something familiar is also unhealthy. That realization can feel like standing in bright sunlight after living in dimness for years. Truth is the well at noon. It is inconvenient, exposing, unavoidable, but it is also where living water is offered. Many people mistake comfort for healing. Comfort soothes symptoms. Healing addresses causes. That is why truth often feels disruptive at first. It rearranges narratives you used to survive. It challenges identities you built around pain. It asks you to stop carrying what you were never meant to normalize. Jesus did not tell the Samaritan woman to try harder or do better. He simply revealed what was already true and then offered something deeper. Living water. Not temporary relief, not another cycle, something that would finally satisfy. The same principle applies to your daily life. Healing begins when you stop managing appearances and start addressing realities. When you say, "This pattern ends with me." When you choose honesty over image. When you let truth name what you have been calling just how things are. The imagery matters here. Truth is not a flood that drowns you, it is a mirror that clarifies. It is a lamp in a dim room. It is a locked door finally opened so air can circulate. Avoidance keeps rooms sealed. Truth lets them breathe. This is why the encounter happened at a well. Wells are deep. They require effort to draw from. Surface solutions will never reach what you need healed. And like that woman, you may have been drawing from the wrong sources: validation, distraction, overwork, control, wondering why thirst keeps returning. The gospel records the heart of this moment in the book of John, chapter 4, verse 24. God is spirit, and his worshipers must worship in the spirit and in truth. Truth is not optional in healing. It is foundational. Spirit and truth move together. Without truth, spirituality becomes avoidance dressed up as faith. When you allow truth to speak, you are not losing protection, you are gaining freedom. Freedom from repeating cycles. Freedom from hidden exhaustion. Freedom from carrying stories that no longer define you. And here is the quiet promise: the moment you stop hiding is often the moment direction appears. The Samaritan woman left her water jar behind and ran back to the village, not ashamed, but changed. Truth turned isolation into testimony. If this section resonates, receive it gently. There is no rush, no force, just invitation. And if this message helps you see your own life with more clarity and compassion, please like this message so it can reach others standing at their own wells. Share it with someone who may be avoiding truth not because they are weak, but because they are tired. And subscribe if you want to continue walking through these moments of clarity and restoration together. Truth opens the way, healing follows. And like the woman at the well, you are not being exposed to be condemned, you are being seen so you can finally be free. Truth does not rush you. It waits until you are ready to stop pretending. When you face it, you do not lose yourself, you recover the parts of you that learn to hide just to survive. Healing then becomes practical and daily. You speak more honestly, choose more wisely, and carry less unnecessary weight. What once drained you now teaches you, and your life slowly reorganizes around peace. There is a moment after a long storm when the air feels different. The sky may still be gray, the ground still wet, but something has shifted. The wind calms, visibility returns. That is the season you are entering now. Not because everything is suddenly perfect, but because alignment has been established and heaven has begun to move in your favor. When the test is complete, heaven does not announce it with noise. It responds with coordination. Things that were stalled begin to loosen. Resistance that once felt constant starts to weaken. You may notice it subtly in timing, in conversations, in unexpected openings that feel strangely effortless compared to the struggle before. This is not luck. It is alignment producing momentum. Heaven aligning forces on your behalf does not mean life becomes passive. It means you are no longer pushing alone. Think of rowing against a current for years, building strength just to stay in place. Then, without warning, the current shifts. You still row, but now movement comes with far less strain. That is the difference alignment makes. You may also notice that certain people drift away naturally, not through conflict, not through drama, but through quiet distance. At the same time, the right support appears not always in dramatic ways, but through timely encouragement, practical help, or insight that arrives exactly when needed. This is how heaven rearranges your environment to match your growth. Doors open differently now. Not all at once, not without discernment. But when they do, there is less confusion attached to them. You recognize what fits. You sense what is premature. You are no longer drawn to every opportunity, only the ones that resonate with truth and peace. That discernment is part of heaven's alignment. There is also a shift in how opposition behaves. Before, resistance felt aggressive and constant. Now, it feels weaker, more scattered, less effective. That is because authority has shifted. Opposition always reacts when it loses leverage. What once drained you now requires far less energy to handle. This is not because you became harder. It is because you became clearer. The practical effects show up in ordinary days. Decisions take less time. Boundaries feel more natural. You stop explaining yourself excessively. You conserve energy without guilt. These are not personality changes, they are signs that heaven is not only moving around you, but stabilizing you from within. The ancient words recorded in the book of Exodus, chapter 14, verse 14. Speak directly into this season, the Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still. Stillness here does not mean passivity. It means alignment without panic, action without striving, trust without collapse. When heaven fights for you, your role is not to retreat, but to move in step rather than ahead. One of the clearest signs of this alignment is timing. Things begin to happen when they should, not just if they should. Delays that once frustrated you now reveal their purpose. You see how being early would have cost you, and how waiting protected you. That perspective is not hindsight alone, it is maturity. Be attentive here. When support increases, responsibility increases as well. Heaven's backing is not permission to become careless. It is an invitation to become precise. What you choose now carries more weight not because you are under pressure, but because you are effective. You may feel a quiet urgency, not anxiety, but awareness. A sense that this season requires presence. This is not stress, it is stewardship. Heaven aligns forces where trust has been proven. Now that alignment is active, your decisions echo further. Gratitude becomes grounding in this phase. Not loud gratitude, but steady recognition. You notice protection where there once was exposure, provision where there once was lack, guidance where there once was confusion. These are not coincidences. They are confirmations. If this recognition settles in your spirit, mark it intentionally, right? Not for attention, not for performance, but for clarity. Comment the number 111 below. This number reflects alignment, awareness, and forward movement after completion. By commenting it, you are not asking for something new, you are acknowledging that heaven is already moving with you. Recognition sharpens awareness, and awareness strengthens discernment. The test is complete. Forces are aligning. Your task now is simple but not small. Remain aware, remain grounded, and move with intention. What once required survival now invites purpose. The number 111 represents alignment after separation. One path, one direction, one clear focus. It speaks to the moment when scattered energy gathers into purpose. Seeing this number reminds you that confusion has ended and forward movement is now intentional, not forced or accidental. It also signals awareness. 111 appears when attention matters more than effort. It invites you to notice what you think, choose, and affirm daily. In this season, clarity multiplies outcomes. Small, aligned decisions now carry weight and open doors that once required struggle. There is a crown reserved for you, but it is not ornamental. It is not a symbol meant to impress others or elevate your image. It is functional. It carries weight, responsibility, and consequence. And it could only be placed on a head that had already learned how to bow. This is why it came later than you expected. The crown you are stepping into now is the result of everything that tried to break you but failed. Every delay taught restraint. Every misunderstanding trained humility. Every season of obscurity stripped vanity from your intentions. You were not being withheld from honor, you were being prepared to carry it without being corrupted by it. Many want authority without accountability, influence without refinement, recognition without responsibility. But heaven does not distribute crowns that way. It waits, it watches, it tests quietly. And when trust is proven, it releases identity with authority attached. This is the shift you are feeling now. You are not becoming someone new. You are being recognized as who you already became under pressure. The crown is not about control, and it is about stewardship. You notice it in how people respond to you now. They listen differently. They trust your discernment. They feel safe bringing weight to you. Not because you demand it, but because you carry yourself with a steadiness that was forged, not learned. Authority does not announce itself, it settles. This is also why your tolerance for chaos has decreased. What you once endured, you now address. What you once ignored, you now correct, not harshly. Clearly, the crown sharpens your sense of order. You are no longer comfortable living beneath what you understand. That discomfort is not arrogance, it is alignment. The responsibility that comes with this crown is subtle but real. Your words carry more impact. Your choices ripple further. Your silence speaks louder. You are no longer just surviving your life, you are shaping environments through presence alone. This is why discernment becomes essential at this stage. Not everything deserves your energy. Not everyone deserves access. You may notice that solitude now feels restorative rather than lonely. That is because crowns are heavy, and rest is part of carrying them well. You are learning when to engage and when to withdraw, when to speak and when to let wisdom remain quiet. This balance is part of the authority you earned. There is also grief here, though few talk about it. The grief of realizing how much you outgrew, how many versions of yourself had to end, how many connections could not come forward with you. This grief does not mean the crown is wrong. It means the process was real. The voice of Scripture speaks directly to this kind of leadership and responsibility. As it is written in the book of Nehemiah, chapter 2, verse 18. And they said, "Let us rise up and build." So they strengthened their hands for the good work. This verse reveals the nature of your crown. It is not passive honor. It is active responsibility. A crown that calls you to build, restore, and take responsibility where others hesitate. The authority you carry now is meant to mobilize, not intimidate. This crown also brings clarity about your assignment. You are no longer motivated by proving anything. You are motivated by impact, by fruit that lasts, by alignment that does not require applause. This changes how you work, love, lead, and decide. Efficiency replaces urgency. Depth replaces noise. You are becoming selective not out of fear, but out of respect for what you carry. Time matters now. Energy matters. Integrity matters more than ever. You no longer have the luxury of living unconsciously. The crown demands presence. And here is the quiet truth: this crown will not protect you from challenge. It will position you to face it without losing yourself. Authority does not eliminate resistance, it renders it manageable. You will still be tested, but no longer confused by the test. You will recognize what is meant to refine and what is meant to distract. You are also learning that leadership begins internally. You govern your reactions. You steward your thoughts. You regulate your emotions. This inner rule is what qualifies you to influence externally. Without it, a crown becomes a burden. With it, the crown becomes natural. Do not rush to display what you carry. Crowns reveal themselves over time, through consistency, through faithfulness in small things, through calm responses where chaos is expected. Let others name what they see. You do not need to. You may have wondered why the journey felt so personal, so isolating, so demanding. This is why. Crowns cannot be crowdsourced. They are forged privately, placed deliberately, and carried daily. You are not stepping into privilege. You are stepping into responsibility that matches your growth. And the reason you will carry it well is simple: you know the cost of wearing it. The crown reserved for you fits because it was shaped around your obedience, your endurance, and your willingness to be refined. Nothing was wasted. Nothing was accidental. And nothing about who you are becoming is excessive for what is coming next. What happens next is not optional, not because you are forced, but because you are awake. There is a difference. When someone is asleep, they must be shaken. When someone is awake, they move because they see. You are no longer responding to pressure from behind. You are responding to vision ahead. This is the moment where heaven expects movement, not noise, courage, not performance, full surrender, not partial agreement. You have crossed the line where delay was mercy. Now delay would be avoidance, not sinful avoidance, human avoidance. The kind that quietly keeps a life smaller than it was meant to be. You may feel it as a gentle insistence, a steady pull rather than a shove. Like standing at the edge of water, you know you must eventually enter. The shore has been safe, familiar, predictable, but it can no longer teach you what the water will. And you were not trained for observation, you were trained for participation. This is why comfort feels thinner now. Old distractions lose their flavor. Old explanations feel hollow. You are not dissatisfied with life, you are dissatisfied with half of it. Half obedience, half courage, half truth. And once you see clearly, you cannot unsee. Heaven does not rush you, but it does expect honesty. Honesty about what must end. Honesty about what must begin. Honesty about what you already know but have postponed naming. This is not a threat. It is an invitation into fullness. In daily life, this shows up practically. You stop delaying conversations that matter. You stop negotiating boundaries you already know are necessary. You stop shrinking your voice in rooms that require your presence. These are not dramatic acts. They are faithful ones. And faithfulness compounds. You are not being asked to leap blindly. You are being asked to step deliberately, one choice, then another, then another. Momentum does not come from intensity. It comes from consistency aligned with truth. There will still be resistance, but now resistance serves as confirmation rather than confusion. You recognize it not as a sign to retreat, but as friction that proves movement. Doors that matter are rarely silent when they open. They make noise. They shift air. They require strength to push through. The ancient words recorded in the book of Joshua, chapter 1, verse 9, speak with clarity into this exact moment. Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged. For the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. Notice the sequence: strength, courage, movement, presence. God's assurance follows obedience, not before it. You move, and His nearness becomes evident along the way. This is why heaven now expects courage from you. Not reckless courage, rooted courage. The kind that knows fear will be present but chooses alignment anyway. The kind that understands surrender is not loss, it is accuracy. And now, let this land gently. If this message has walked with you like a companion on a long road, then let it rest in your hands for a moment. Pressing like becomes the quiet nod you give when truth meets recognition. No announcement, just acknowledgement. If you know someone still standing at the edge, unsure whether to step forward, passing this message along is like lighting a small lantern and setting it beside their path. You are not pushing them. You are offering light. If this space has become a place where clarity gathers, choosing to subscribe is like returning to a well you trust not out of obligation, but because living water has been found here before. And if something inside you has been stirred not loudly, but deeply, leaving a comment is like placing a stone on an altar, a personal marker that says, I was here when this mattered, not for others to see, but so you remember. None of these are demands. They are gestures, voluntary, beautiful, like breaths taken after a long climb. What happens next is movement, not all at once, not without rest, but with direction. Heaven stands with you now, not ahead of you doing the work, not behind you pressuring you forward, but beside you, matching your pace. You have passed the ultimate test, not because you were flawless, but because you were faithful. And faithfulness always leads to partnership. Walk forward. You do not need to see the entire road to take the next step. Clarity unfolds as you move, not before. Each faithful action sharpens your vision, steadies your heart, and confirms that you were never walking alone. What once felt uncertain now responds to your presence with quiet assurance. Carry what you have learned gently but firmly. Let patience guide your pace and courage steady your voice. You are no longer proving your worth, you are living it. And as you continue forward, your life itself becomes an invitation for others to believe that alignment is possible. You do not need to rush away from this moment. Let it sit with you the way silence settles after a meaningful conversation. Nothing here demands a decision right now. Some truths are meant to be carried quietly before they are acted upon. Others are simply meant to be recognized, like a mirror you glance into and then walk away from changed. If parts of this journey resonated, it may be because they named something you were already sensing but had not yet put into words. That recognition alone is enough for today. Growth does not always announce itself with bold steps. Sometimes it arrives as a subtle shift in how you see your own life, your past, or your next choice. And if you feel the urge to pass this along, do so gently. Sharing can be an act of care, like handing someone a cup of water without insisting they drink it. Not everyone is standing at the same place on the path, and that is okay. What reaches one person today may reach another later. If you choose not to share, that is also a valid ending. You may want to keep what touched you private, letting it work quietly within you. Some insights grow best when protected from noise, allowed to settle into daily life through small, thoughtful actions rather than public declarations. What matters most is not what you do with this message outwardly, but what you allow it to do inwardly. Perhaps it reminds you to pause before reacting. Perhaps it gives language to a season you are already in. Perhaps it simply reassures you that you are not alone in questions you thought were yours alone. There is no final instruction here, only space. Take what is useful, leave what is not, and trust that whatever truly belongs to you will stay, shaping your steps in ways that feel natural, grounded, and honest.